This video continues the Unit 3 notes. This will cover 3.3 and 3.4. Here we're talking about how federalism divides power between the national government and the state governments. That's what federalism is, though it also is a reference to the federal government itself. What is federalism? It's a split of power between the federal government and the states. Define and explain the three basic kinds of constitutional powers. Okay. Why is the supremacy clause so important to the federal system? Because the central government, there has to be some kind of order, and the central government is supreme to the state governments. All right. Division of power between national and state governments, that's what federalism is. The Constitution explains how that system will work. So you have a picture of the Constitution here. Go ahead and write this in. Division of power. Go ahead and skip the part. I assume you can find your own document. If not, raise your hand right now, and I'll talk you through it. No pause. Delegated powers. The national government has only those powers delegated to it or granted to it by the Constitution. These are the ones listed. Write down, well, why did they thought they were trying to be stronger than the Articles of Confederation? Well, they are, and it is. Why that is going to be based on how those powers are listed out. You have the expressed or enumerated powers. You have the implied powers that follow from the expressed ones. And then you have the inherent powers that have to be because that's how governments work. Let's look at this cartoon. All right, let's see what there is to say. The forefathers deciding on a final draft for the U.S. Constitution. I thought we were going to leave enough room at the bottom to write. Only kidding. That's Franklin. I think the one in the middle is Madison. Oh, right. Well, so we'll just have to add that later. In other words, these guys are worried about the Fed having too much power, even though they're writing the power because the government of England had too much power over the U.S. And so, yeah, but this is a joke. Anyway, express powers are the ones specifically written out. Article 1, Section 8 has this list. Power to tax, coin money, regulate foreign and interstate commerce, raise and maintain an army, declare war. Just that in itself is a lot of power. But Article 2 has express powers of the executive, and Article 3 has the judicial powers listed. This is the Revolutionary Army. See them in their blue coats. It's the Liberty coin that was minted in 1989, which was hearkening back to the Constitution. All right, let's go ahead and write in these express powers. You can actually pull up the Constitution and look at it. It's pretty much written just like that. So, expressed means specifically mentioned. Constitution. Power to tax. That's the big one. And that was the one that was really missing and made the Articles of Confederation weak. But raising money, taxing, coining money was a big deal too, because there was too much different monies in circulation because of the states. Having it one uniform money was good for business. Regulating interstate commerce. So states are going to disagree on how things should run economically from time to time. Giving them another organization to run it was useful. Declaring war sounds like a strong power, but with executive actions, it's been lessened of late. But yeah, and that one we covered. Article 2 has executive powers listed. Article 3, the judicial, as well as other judiciary organizations. Then you have these implied powers. They're not expressly stated, but they are reasonably suggested, whatever that means. Article 1, Section 8 is the necessary and proper clause. But almost anything you could be do could be necessary and proper to running a government. but that doesn't mean it's expressly written. Why list them out if the list doesn't matter? But they wanted to make sure the government wasn't too weak. But people feared this necessary and proper clause, or the which is um, in some circles, legal ones mostly. It's nicknamed the elastic clause because it can cover everything. Kind of takes away the whole point of having the powers listed. So, but yeah, but that's part of the Constitution too, so you can't ignore it. But it's going to create tension with the notion of limited powers and a conservative interpretation of the Constitution, because that clause in itself suggests that you should have an open-ended kind of interpretation to most people's reading. There's thousands of examples of necessary and proper clause, but building of interstate highways. We didn't even have cars or trains. Trains by the time the Constitution was around. So this was like, well, why are we even some hydroelectric dams prohibiting racial discrimination? That wasn't something that anyone thought was needed, but we've deemed it necessary and proper to the running of government and how we should treat our people. So yeah, and hydroelectric power didn't exist yet. Eventually, there's going to be nuclear power. Is that necessary and proper? I don't know. I know it's dangerous. So, so this can be stretched to cover everything, and you see the person straining, even though they're standing on the log. Um, the necessary and proper clause is written in the Constitution, but what that means is not really written. You have inherent powers, powers that all sovereign states have: the power to regulate immigration, acquire territory, protect the nation from rebellion. This has been applied by interpretation of presidents. That last one was definitely how Lincoln read it when he responded to Civil War, to the states' attempt to withdraw, the southern states to withdraw from the Union. He said, "You can't do that, and we're going to go to war." But anyway, the power to regulate immigration is implied with running your country. I don't think it's written, but it's necessary to running your country, so it's not even a question. Protect nation from rebellion, acquiring territory, nations expand, are inherent to being a country. Powers of the states. Oh, the Louisiana Purchase uh, was an example of acquiring territory. It's not the only one. We purchased some land in Gadsden. We just take some land from in Hawaii. We bought land in Alaska. So it's multiple examples of that. Powers of the states. These are reserved powers. They're powers not given to the national government. Instead, they're reserved for the states by and through the 10th Amendment. What does that mean exactly? Uh, Given to the national government, reserved to the states by the 10th Amendment. Oh, it's a blank there. Just get rid of that blank. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But then you have some powers that are denied, and those can be expressly mentioned, or they can be inherent. That the states are not supposed to do that. You could also have exclusive powers, ones that only national government can control, like immigration and acquiring territory. But you could also have some concurrent powers, powers that are shared by nation and state: taxes, crime, and punishment. These are the typical examples. Go ahead and write this in. The first one is national government only, exclusive. Only they get to do it. It's like particular picture like a veiled rope. You're not supposed to get beyond there. That's only national government business. That kind of thing. Current powers shared. I can do it. You can do it. So normally governments don't like to share, but in this case they share power on these particular issues, and they try to help each other. Though sometimes the state doesn't like when FBI comes in, and vice versa. Let's go to supreme law of the land. Article 6, Section 2, under the Supremacy Clause, says that the national government rules in any conflict with state laws. So I really only needed to write government rules, but I did too much. So that's no problem. Just got to erase a little. And yeah. So under the Supremacy Clause, when the state and the national law are in conflict, the federal government or the national government will, will be above. It's a linchpin of the Constitution because it's joining both national and state governments into one single unit. The Supreme Court acts as a unit umpire. They say, okay, this is for the federal government, this is for the states, federal, national government. What is federalism? I'm going to just read through the answers. I'm not typing anything for you. Make sure you write it in the form of a sentence, whether I say it as a sentence or not. Federalism is the division of power between the federal government and the state government. Define it and explain the three basic kind of constitutional powers. The three basic kind of constitutional powers are, um, does it express? See how it helps to have it listed here? Express. That means they're listed in the Constitution. Implied, inferred, mostly from the necessary and proper clause, which is listed, and inherent, something that every government needs to do, which means typically immigration territory. Period. Why is the Supremacy Clause so important to the federal system? Supremacy Clause is so important to the federal system because it makes it clear that the federal government is above the states when passing out laws. That's it. That concludes the lecture that goes with 3.3.